Yeah, hey guys. So just introduction. I'm Gavin Cernek. I'm a friend developer at American Eagle. Been here just a little bit over 2 years. And today I just want to talk a little bit about serverless and edge architecture. Kind of like what Joe was saying. This was a little bit of a spur of the moment talk for me. So kind of just like off the cuff. I really didn't know much anything about other than hearing these terms. So I'm not like some serverless guru going to teach you everything about how it works. I really took this out as an opportunity to like teach myself like what this actually means and like kind of just do a little bit more discovery. So I just have more of like an informative talk. I have a little app at the end. It's gonna blow your mind, but nothing as polished as Brock's. So without further ado, I'll get started here. So the first thing I kind of want to talk about is like an inspiration for this talk. I kind of feel like everyone has heard, or just the JavaScript community a lot is based on like buzzwords and a lot of hype. I'm sure a lot of people would agree with me on that. And serverless and edge, I feel like have been like at the top of that pyramid. Like it's really become like a marketing term, and with that, I feel like as a lot of people you see on Twitter here, if you can brave the toxicity on Twitter, it's actually pretty useful to like see what people are talking about, like what's new. But you'll see these tweets talk about what is serverless, and you can see in the bottom left corner they're talking about edge functions and serverless functions. It's just like they're throwing around all these terms, and as a developer, you're just like, what is all this? You feel like you're getting left behind in the dust, and you can see too in the top right. When I decided to do this talk, Vercel just announced their data storage. So that's kind of what prompted all of these tweets about serverless. And it's just kind of what got me interested into looking into it. So really the question I want to answer is, what does serverless even mean? Because serverless and edge are not synonymous with each other. They don't mean the same thing. But they're very closely coupled. So I guess that's where a lot of the confusion comes from. So the first thing I wanted to point out, and this was plastered everywhere, serverless does not mean there are no actual servers. That would not be possible. So it just means that you're not managing your own server. You don't have actual physical hardware. You haven't set up a server yourself. You subscribe to some service that manages all that for you. So it's kind of abstracted away from you. So really what that allows is a reduction in complexity. It's a lot also cheaper because you're not hit with that upfront cost of having all this physical hardware for your servers. You don't have to have a team to manage it. You don't have to have the knowledge to manage it. You kind of just pay for it, and then it's somebody else's problem, and hopefully it all works. It's more of like a pay-as-you-go model as well. So with traditional servers, you'll buy the servers, you'll have the physical location. Maybe you manage it yourself. Maybe you have a team that manages it. There's another style called cloud computing where you're still paying for servers and computations, but it's more on like a fixed scale. So you'll pay for a certain amount of storage space that you can use. But the problem with that is oftentimes if you're a hobbyist or a small company, you're not getting a lot of traffic, you might be overpaying for a lot of that space and not even using it. So it's not financially wise to do it that way. But with edge computing, you only pay for what you're using. So, for example, I think a good analogy was, imagine you're renting a house. Let's say you're out at work for maybe 12 hours a day, and after that you go do other things, grocery shopping, etc. You're not using that house for the other 12 hours of the day, or you're maybe only sleeping for 8 hours, so you're only using the bedroom for 8 hours. That's kind of like a similar analogy here, where if you're not using the service, you're not paying for it. Only when you actually get a request to that serverless provider do you actually end up paying for it. So some popular serverless providers I just listed here. I'm not going to talk about each one, but you can see like AWS, Microsoft, Google, pretty much all like the big tech companies offer some services to developers to develop applications on. And then you also have some companies like Cloudflare, which is pretty much like that's their whole thing, is providing services to developers. So what do they actually provide? Mostly of them are database and storage. So you'll see like I think Cloudflare has like SQLite databases, so you can use SQLite to do queries and do all kind of data service. Key value. So I think Vercel, that was like one of their announcements too, Vercel KV, which is like Redis. So if you just want some key, like just store some JSON data with a key in there, maybe if you're doing like saved shopping carts or something like that, you can have services for that. And then just unstructured data as well, maybe files or images. And then the second one, which I'm sure has caused a lot of confusion, are functions as a service. These are like Cloudflare workers or the big culprit here, Vercel Edge functions, where essentially these are modular pieces of code that are at the edge that can be ran there. So it's just lower latency for your users. They don't have to go as far to the origin server to run the code. So advantages of using it, again, the number one is really lower cost because you're only using what you pay for. So you don't have the upfront server cost, or you're not paying for server space that you're not actually using. They're also really scalable. Basically, whenever you get hit with a request, that edge server will spin up your function and run it. So if it gets hit with a lot, it can spin up more and more functions and then serve those people. So it's automated. It's basically inherently scalable. So it can serve a lot of people, and you don't have to worry about the complexity of scaling your own server. It's also simpler in ways writing these functions because you only have to worry about the one function at a time. Like, it's not really a good way of putting it, but if you can write a function to do one thing really well, you can also reuse it in other applications. Like, I kind of forgot what that point was, to be honest. But anyways, it's simpler to write instead of, you can post your function. Time to launch and updates are also a lot easier because you're not worried about setting up your servers and doing all your backend services. That's all managed elsewhere for you. And also, if you want to edit it on the fly, like I think Cloudflare Workers have this, allows you to edit your function with their UI. So it's like if you just need to make an update to your endpoint, you can do that pretty fast and easy, and it's deployed pretty much immediately. Then reduce latency, of course. If you're at the edge, then you're not making that as long of a trip. You're more close to the user, so it's going to be a lot faster. And then also dynamic content. When you're able to locate like where the edge server is at, of course. So let's say you want some type of different content showed based on where your request came from. Like you can do that as well, like A/B testing. So if I want somebody to see a different style of my site to do some testing, I can do that. Some disadvantages: testing and debugging get harder because you're not managing the back end, of course, and you can't really recreate their environment as easily. I know they have some things to kind of test that out, but it's never going to be as perfect as having it yourself. Security as well, because you're using shared storage server space. Other apps are running on there, so it could, if somebody is getting hit with like a lot of requests, maybe it could start to slow down the edge server, or if somebody has like a data breach somehow, maybe that could compromise some data. It's really not great for long-running processes or apps that have a lot of high traffic, because while it does only pay, you only pay for what you're using, the pricing could get a little bit high if you're getting hit with like a lot of requests from different places. So if you have a large app, it might not be great. Vendor lock-in, of course, kind of with anything, you don't really want to depend on other people. You kind of want to own your own stuff, but in some scenarios it's not possible, but that could be seen as a disadvantage. And then probably the biggest one is cold start. So when your function is not being used, it shuts it down to not over-provision server space. So when the next time it gets called, that person's going to hit with more latency than a subsequent request, just because it doesn't have it actually fresh. So then who should use it? Really, I think like a hobbyist person, so somebody who obviously can't afford or manage servers. Obviously very helpful to publish apps. If you need a very fast turnaround, so maybe you have a concept and you just need to get it out the door really quick, and you don't want to, again, manage and set up all those servers, you can kind of just publish this. Really, they're just a lot of like clicking buttons and connecting things, so it can be pretty simple. And then also infrequent traffic. If you're not getting hit with like a lot of stuff and you don't need a lot of server space, it can be pretty cost effective. And so that was kind of like the serverless part. The difference with Edge is the Edge is a location. I bold and underline that because, like you saw, Vercel kind of markets Edge as like a lot of different things, and that's what caused a lot of the confusion, at least for me in the beginning. So if you've gone through a lot of those Twitter rants, everyone's saying the Edge is a location and nothing else. So the Edge is the closest point to your user that you can get served the application from. So again, closer means lower latency, which means faster. And so that's why it's beneficial, and it's a general use term. So don't get confused by marketing. And then also want to make the point that serverless functions don't always mean it's run at the edge, even though I know edge functions kind of make that confusing. That was kind of like what I found in my discovery. So what I went on after that was try to actually implement some of this stuff. I'll be honest, the first thing I tried to do was Cloudflare workers with a Remix app, but the documentation, I don't know if anyone else has looked at that, is like really confusing. Like I was trying to go through a quick start and then it's like drops me off in the middle of it. It's like, oh yeah, you just gotta like bind it to your application now. And I'm like, okay, well how do I do that? And then it just gives me a link to tell me what bindings are. I was like, okay, thanks. So I kind of needed something a little bit more like point and click and like a little bit more structured. So I did Vercel, and I was like, you know what? It's kind of like what prompted this talk anyway, so maybe it works. So what I have here is an amazing app. Don't get blown away when I open it up. There you go. So pretty much the first page, I'm going to be doing the Vercel KV, which is the key value storage with Redis. And then these next two ones, I have edge functions. So just functions running at the edge they allow me to use. So this first one, you'll see, I just have my name, ID, email, and address. And if I actually go in, here's my repo for it. I think it was this one. Yeah, you'll see here that I'm just using their KV package here. And then this is the key for the KV storage. And then I'm just grabbing, and just do look away, I'm using inline stuff, not Tailwind. So you see, I can just grab this, and it's on the edge, nice key value storage. And then this one was an edge function, just kind of showing where the request came from. Again, not really much to see there. And then this last one, I was calling a third-party API from it. And the cooler part of seeing how this works, let's see. If I show that real quick. Pretty much all it took to make these edge functions was you pass this config, and then you set the runtime, and then you have this next response that they give you, and that's all it takes. It's just a simple API route if you're used to Next.js, and then you just need to pass this config to make it an edge function. And then here was the same one for the third party. If I can go to the logs is where you'll see how it's actually like labeled as. Yeah, so you see this one was the key value. You see the type is serverless function, and its runtime is Node.js from Washington. And the other two were edge functions. So again, different things. I don't know why they named it that, but yeah, you see edge function here, also from Washington. And then I think that was that one. So yeah, you can see that this is hitting the nearest edge server, I guess, is Washington. And basically I'm able to deploy backend services and use them in my front-end app, even though I don't know the complexities of setting up that server. I can just write simple functions that just do fetch responses. And as a front-end developer, really just kind of build out an app all by myself. So yeah, that was pretty much all I found in my discovery. I don't know if I can really answer any questions, but if anyone has questions, that's like an open forum. Yeah. Yeah. Right. I don't think they have. Yeah, I see now the Cloudflare workers allowed that, but I don't think Vercel has like an interface for that. Like you can edit the function live, yeah. Because this one, mhm.
Something like Vercel JSON file that has.
Yeah. I,
Also got Vercel JSON.
clearly not there.
It's usually. You can. Yeah, so it does do a lot of that directly repo. I was curious if. So it just be based on the definition, the structure of the file, just makes it work. That's pretty awesome. I mean, that's, if you. That's nuts. I haven't done any like serverless stuff with that one. Some people like using the serverless.com, if you go and look stuff up over like just doing AWS function, Because usually you're just pushing each function yourself and it's a nightmare. Where you go to like AWS and you're like putting the code in there and it's so that's really nice that you can do. But it just sort of manages it for you.
Yeah, anything under your /API roots is just the serverless function that resolves the place for you.
So you're just kind of stuck with serverless with them. Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, so you can see why like doing it with Next was so much easier than Cloudflare Workers. It was just literally just write the config object and that was it.
I complain about that. So, yeah, I'm just saying that. I made a fuss.
I should have listened.
Sure. No, I said it was bad. No, I get it. Made a fuss. Sorry, Gavin.
No, you're good. You're good.
It is. There's so many ways to do that. That's why I'm always interested because the dev experience varies so much. I'm always curious.
So Gavin, you said nay on Cloudflare and yay on Vercel. Were there any that you just threw your hands up said, no, not even, I mean, it sounds like you got some part of the way with Cloudflare or anything about?
I think I got their KV to work, but I'm like, that wasn't like as cool as like a server function. Yes, I was like, I tried to get Cloudflare Workers to do it, and I just like the documentation was not working with me. I think I looked into Notify briefly, but I didn't. I just like I knew this one was going to be super easy. Just click it all up because like that's like the beauty of like Vercel or having their own framework too. It's just so easy to integrate with all their other stuff. Like it was pretty much click buttons and throw it like attached to your GitHub repo, and that was it. So the simplicity there, I guess, is what trumps like some other solutions, I would say. Yeah. I do want to say like the Vercel Postgres, like I heard a lot of talk saying that it was like just a wrapper around another provider and it was like ridiculously expensive. There's a lot of debate about that. Right. So like with that service, I guess like there's a lot of like shopping around you have to do and like finding the best deal or like who actually is like who's actually good and who's not.
Did it serve applications now?
Yeah, you can put web apps on these functions for sure. I actually had a version of that running, but I had to abandon that one too. Mm.
Wrangler was a nightmare back there and a whole bunch of that. Did you, when you were looking at Cloudflare, did you have any fun with Wrangler? Is that a term that's familiar?
Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately. And I think too the funny thing was is like the day before I was trying to do it, like they had like a big update with something where like the CLI like you can generate like a whole bunch of different apps. I think it broke some things because I was like trying to generate stuff. I followed the steps exactly and it just would not start. Like it was just blowing up on me. So
Well, thank you, Kevin.
yeah, thank you guys.